while people are signing in, I'm going to say welcome to another Speed Secrets Chalk Talk. If you've been on some of my Chalk Talks in the past, you know that basically they're a Q&A session. People type in their questions and I answer it, and it doesn't really have a specific topic or theme, but this one does. This one is specifically about the Garmin Catalyst, and I've been playing with this thing for the past couple of years, I guess it's been, and as I go out there on the road and I'm at different tracks, I get people coming up to me and asking me questions about the Catalyst and how to use it and things like this, and some technical questions. A lot of the how to use it, I can answer. I can answer some of those, but some of the technical questions, that's not my area of expertise. So when I thought about the number of questions I've had about the Catalyst, I started thinking about, well, if I'm going to do one of these, I really want some experts on here with me. So I reached out to Garmin, and fortunately, we have a couple of people from Garmin here with us, joining us. And Adam Spence, Adam, you can wave. There you go, Adam. Thank you.
Hey, guys.
Adam, can I call you the father of the Catalyst? You're kind of
That's quite a grand name. I don't know if we should go that far, but I certainly had a lot to do with it. How's that?
Okay, the king of the Catalyst. Okay, there you go.
That's even worse.
Yeah. But the great thing about Adam is, well, many of the great things. One of the great things about Adam is not only is he an engineer that works for Garmin, but he's one of us. He's a gearhead. He's a driver, and I kind of feel like Adam is a driver, gearhead, motorsport person first, and a engineer that happens to work for Garmin and makes cool stuff. So Adam's known this thing from the very beginning. Quinn,
Howdy.
Quinn's been part of Adam's team from the very, very beginning of this thing, right? And written code and probably soldered some pieces together or something. I don't know what magic it is you perform back there with that wand, but the bottom line is, if you have a technical question that these guys can't answer, I don't really know who could. So I'm putting, there we go. This is going to be Stump the Garmin Experts night. See if you can come up with a question that they can't answer. No. So with that, one other thing I want to clarify here is the idea of this session is to talk about best uses of the Catalyst, as well as some technical questions. This is not the forum for, well, like I had just recently, I had somebody go on and on and on and on with me, telling me that I had to go to Garmin and tell them to make the Catalyst in different colors, because he was trying to find one that matched the color of the interior of his car. So if you have requests about, I want the Catalyst to do this, the place to do that is send an email into Garmin Pit Crew at garmin.com, and in the subject line put Catalyst Chalk Talk. Put that in there. And in fact, if you have something after this session, you got a question or something like that, and that we didn't get a chance to answer, you can fire it into that email address, and Adam's going to be answering every single one of them at 3:00 in the morning. So with that, you'll notice in the chat box over to the right-hand side, there's a chat area where many of you have been saying hello. There's also another part that you can click on, Q&A. Put your questions in the Q&A area. My lovely assistant, Robin, will be helping me monitor all the questions, and we'll be deciding who's going to answer these. So you can start typing in any of your questions you've got right now. And Adam, do you want to jump in here? And actually, there's one question already. Garmin Pit Crew at garmin.com, if you can't see it on the screen. Adam, do you want to jump in and start off and give us a little preview of things we want to talk about?
Yeah, so I'll give you a little bit of background just while we're waiting for the questions to come in. So, just as Ross has already said and given a little bit of history of where the product came from, like most Garmin products, they come from our associates' passion. And I'm very fortunate enough to have been working for Garmin for a while now, and also been very passionate about motorsports. And so it was one of the things that even when I was partaking in it, I had a few key sort of elements that always frustrated me, such as forgetting why on a Friday I could be quicker than I was on a, Sunday morning. And what was that line I just took that I really wanted to go and solve? So that's really kind of where it started, was through frustrations that I was having. And then really the Catalyst was born, and it kind of went from there. So it's been a really exciting journey. And I'll say, if you really want to know any more about that journey, I actually did a podcast with Ross, probably back, September 2020 now, somewhere in that order. I'd have to go back and remind myself. But anyway, I did it back there. But go and search for it. It'll be Garmin, podcast with myself. And I think it was episode 160, somewhere in that order. Ross, can you confirm or deny?
I think I will confirm that it was episode 160. So if you go to speedsecrets.com and go to podcasts, you can find 160, or you can do it on whatever, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, all those different podcast things. You can find it number 160, I believe it is. So yeah, I guess that would actually give people sort of a background if you really care. Maybe you just want to jump in and start using it. So which one do we want to start with?
So let's have a look. There was one question I just saw there, and this is actually an important one. It actually came up in the chat. So it's talking about, by the look of it, someone had upgraded a card into their side card using a 256 gigabyte card, and they had some issues where it was freezing. Now, we have seen some scenarios like that if you don't use a high quality card, and that's critical. So like a lot of modern day devices, you have to use the right cards. And some of these cheaper cards that are out there, they can be really appealing because they are inexpensive, but they certainly won't be able to perform anywhere near the level that they need to record video to. So I would definitely say if you're experiencing that, as the gentleman there is, in the chat, then please just go away and make sure it's a high quality card. We actually list some compatible cards on our site, so on Garmin.com. So I definitely encourage you to do that.
Okay, and I'm just going to start jumping in all over the place here, and this one kind of it's almost in the category of what they want to do. Any plans to add auto slalom support? You can confirm or deny. And any plans to add multi-camera support? Yeah, you can just say yes, no, or.
So with a lot of those things, like Ross says, if you've got things like that where you have suggestions, feel free to send those to Garmin Pit Crew. So things like autocross, obviously the product doesn't support now, and other elements. We're constantly thinking about modifications, changes, and improvements. But with things like that, in terms of not really talking about the current feature set, then feel free to send that into Garmin Pit Crew. But it's not something that the product currently does.
Yeah. So this is an interesting one for me, but. Doug asked, given Garmin's involvement in cycling, has the Catalyst been used to improve descending skills, brake, turn, and lines similar to auto racing? I don't even quite understand that, because I don't understand what the cycling device does. So.
It's really interesting. So obviously we can't talk too much about some of the plans that we have or where we've applied the technology elsewhere. But for sure, there's a lot of overlap into other markets that we serve. Now, I'm not completely familiar with some of the cycling market, but we've definitely got people that are focused on that and are fully connected with what we're doing to see how things might be applicable.
Okay. And Will had asked, I'm running a legacy TrackMate in my vintage Alpha GTV. The display unit is mounted on the dash at the level of the tack and oil pressure gauge. Is that a suitable height to mount the Catalyst? Is there any provision to input analog data? So to me, the big thing, I'm going to just comment on this as from a driving perspective. To me, you want the Catalyst in a position where you can catch it at least out of the corner of your eye, but you certainly don't want it in any kind of a way that's going to be blocking your view in any kind of way, right? And you don't need it to be. One of the things that I love about the Catalyst is the predictive lap timing part of it. Is it's not only are there numbers, but the screen will go red if you're going slower than you have on previous laps, and it will turn green if you're going faster than you previously. So out of the corner of your eye, you can just tell if the screen, that part of the screen is red or green, and it's actually kind of a scaling part, isn't it? Like, it doesn't just go red or green. It's kind of a scaling thing a little bit. And, just having that out of the corner of your eye, I think is important.
So I've seen a couple a couple of comments that have come up, Ross, just to that point, which maybe I'll hit on the head straight away. So
Yeah.
Dave and Victor, you both kind of illustrated that, hey, you wanted to know a little bit more about Catalyst. So I think if people want to kind of have a little bit of an introduction now, I'll do a 5-minute introduction that might get things going to kind of help explain a little bit more about the product and what it does. And then we can go from there. So fundamentally then, how Catalyst differs from any other product that's out there already or was out there before we released it is a driving performance optimizer. And what that means is that rather than focusing on the vehicle, which a lot of other data systems do, and even in my car, that's obviously what I've got. I've got a data system to focus around the vehicle and understand what's happening there. We're focused around the driver. And so it's fundamentally different. What that means then is not only is it super easy to go out and collect data on the driver, but when you come back out, it's actually really easy to review. So what I mean by that, I'll just give you a quick tour. So straight away, when you fire up the device, you get this very friendly home screen, which you'll see every time you turn on the device, once you've done the initial setup. Now, if I want to go out and drive, once I've got the camera set up and everything else like that, I click on drive, and immediately it's taken to select the track that I'm going to go and drive at. Now, obviously, we're based here in Kansas, so that is our local track, or it's the one at least closest to us. So I'm just going to go ahead and select Kansas Speedway, even though it's just down the road. So I select the configuration. And from there, I'm going to set up the rest of the information, such as the driver, such as the car. I might check the audio because that's important for the audio coach. Check the camera alignment. So again, this has already been set up and I'm not connected to a camera right now, but I would check that. And then I would look at some other elements such as, is it a wet or dry track? But I'm pretty much good to go. And from there, I click start and that's it.
Just one thing, when Adam was going through the track list there, we come with a whole bunch of pre-populated tracks all around the world. But if you see one that's maybe closer to where you're at that we don't actually have in our database, you can go and just hit add custom track or add custom configuration if we're just missing one of the configurations that you drive, and it'll treat it just the same as any other track on the device.
And can I just to clarify that part is, I think people think that you have the track layouts installed in every unit for every track in the world. And, really, you don't have to go into the details, but basically, where the start finish line is, and then it figures it out and the device figures out the track from there, correct?
Absolutely. So I'll do that now, right? So pretend we've gone out and we've driven somewhere like Circuit of the Americas. I just happen to have some data on here from Circuit of the Americas. So that's a good segue. So once I get off the track, I would normally see the summary screen, but I'm going to go in here and review my data now, which you would normally do from the summary screen. So effectively, I click on review, and then I scroll down, and hopefully you can see the list of places where this device might have been. And I click on Circuit of the Americas, and there's a session there. And so from there, I click the one session that I'm interested in. And you can see immediately, this is that session summary. So back to Ross's point, the device prior to going out on that track had no idea of where the track went. The device, as it drives, is actually building a 3D model around it of everything it can basically see and sense and constructing that track. That's what makes it fundamentally different. From this, it unlocks a couple of key technologies. And one is the true track positioning, which is knowing for the first time where you are laterally on the track, which again was always my bugbear, because whilst sure, where I'm braking is important, knowing what side of the track I'm on when I'm braking is also critically important. So that is a key technology that we have and the device is using to again construct that track. The other element then, which is really important, is actually the true optimal lap. And we'll talk probably more about that throughout the night, but I won't go into too much detail now. But fundamentally then, the reason why this product is so different from anywhere else is immediately I see this and I can jump into actionable feedback. So if I want to, for example, work out, okay, how can I get quicker? And Ross has got some really interesting insights into how to use it in different periods of time. But if I want to get quicker, I might jump straight away into the opportunities. So these are now my time-ordered opportunities of how to gain time. Straight away here, you can see an opportunity 1, which I believe is turn 11 on this track. This is basically telling me I can save almost 0.8 of a second compared to my average line. And if I look at why, it will basically talk me through a story, which is, we start by braking and then turning. Well, not always, but that generally is the case. And then so we turn, we do the apex, and then we have the resulting speeds. So you can see here these tabs along the top, that's actually telling that story. So if I look at my braking though, I can see immediately, not only is it saying it in words, and hopefully you can read that on the screen. If not, we can make it full screen. Not only is it saying it in words that, hey, you need to brake earlier, harder, and for longer, but I can actually see now for the first time that data, or the way it's being animated effectively, and see where I'm starting to brake. So yes, I was carrying more speed, so I had a little bit more speed coming out of the previous corner, but I can see there that basically that pink purple line is actually indicating how long I'm braking for. Not only that though, and this is the really exciting bit, is I can click on those braking thumbnails and see the gantry and the different in position in that gantry, which again is what fundamentally differs from any other system, because I can see immediately where my braking location is. And that's what's really, really exciting about it. So long story short, this is one element in terms of the intuitive data analysis. And then there's a whole other element in terms of the on-track coaching that the product will do. So hopefully that will give you a sort of 5-minute overview of summary of fundamentally what the Catalyst is and how it differs. And then maybe we can jump into some of the Q&A, Ross, if you've got some lined up.
Yes, there's many of them. I'm trying to think of which order to go in here, because I could have just jumped in there as well. So one of the questions is, and this is more of a technical thing, but it's Matthew asked, can it record your last lap without passing the start finish line? And I know that this comes up where somebody has gone off on a lap, and then they come into the pits. Well, they would like to go and review that.
So I think, Quinn, you can probably answer.
Yeah. So we just released a new software update just last week, as the racing season's starting up for those of us in places where it snows. And we now have a much more generous video saving methodology. So basically, once you hit 25 miles per hour, it's going to start recording. And even if it doesn't record a session because it missed a finish line crossing or something like that, you have the option at the end of the session to still save your video. So if all else happens, the video is still there. You can take a look at it. We know that people still get a benefit out of seeing their video, even if they don't always have data to go along with it.
Okay, and so David asked, can we dump data to somewhere so we can see the graphs in a larger format? For instance, I would like to compare my braking pressure to a coach's benchmark lap. This is a question that I've had many times, and I go, why do you want that? The screen, and for me, this is like perfect. And yeah, I mean, you can zoom in a little bit on some of the things, and it kind of does it. One of the great things about this is you don't need anything else. You don't need to own a laptop. You don't need to download it. You just do it all on the device itself. So unless you guys want to add anything to that.
Yeah, no, absolutely, Ross. You hit the nail on the head. If we have to download it to a computer, we failed to do our job properly. So
yeah.
To the point of not connecting it to a computer, I see a couple of people asking about updates. So we've been regularly releasing software updates for the Catalyst since we released it. You don't need to connect it to your computer to do that. If you want to, you certainly can. We have Garmin Express software for updating your device, but it also is able to update from the device itself. So if you hit the Wi-Fi icon at the top here, it'll show you all of your Wi-Fi connections available in your area. If you connect to Wi-Fi on there, you should see a little red icon on the gear up in the top right, and you can follow that red icon to get software updates of your device and make sure it's got the latest and greatest track listings from around the world and actual software running on the unit.
Okay. So Jim asked, I could not hear the comments in my car with my helmet on. I have it connected to my internal helmet headphones. I cannot get it loud enough. Thoughts? So one of my thoughts is the Garmin Catalyst users Facebook page has some great discussion on there who people have found different solutions for different helmets and different cars and stuff like that. So that's one place I would look for. I mean, I have used this with the helmet on with, simple either Apple iPods or earpods or, wired, cheap little headphone things, and it works. I know I've done it in a race car where I had it wired into the actual radio system in the car. Somebody makes a little Y adapter tool for that. And I have heard somebody say that with a Stilo helmet that have the speakers built into the helmet, they've had a difficult time with that one. And I don't know what the solution is that, but I bet somebody has found something. And I don't know whether you guys have heard any, no pun intended, heard anything else about that. So
yeah, I'll touch on some of those elements. So for sure, we have heard some experience with Bluetooth headsets that some of them are limiting the volume that the device will actually go up to. So we've definitely heard that. So if you're using Bluetooth, just maybe try it, with maybe a friend's headset, just to kind of see how that differs. But for sure, just plugging in even a cheap, set of headphones works really well. And that's what we do when we demo the product. So we've had a lot of success doing that. Built-in helmet headsets, it has been kind of hit and miss. I know Peter Krause, who looks like he's actually on the call. Yep. He's certainly had a little bit of experience with that, and so he's been able to answer some of those questions, and I know he's become very experienced with that. So definitely, maybe reach out to Peter for some of those aftermarket equipment, or anyone really who's got that experience. But I know in particular he's touched on some of those elements.
Yeah. So Gary asks, is there an orientation limitation to the mount of the Catalyst? Can I mount it at any angle in the cockpit facing the driver? And maybe it's the right time to talk about that, as well as the mounting of the camera. You guys can cover that. So
I'll let Quinn start on that one.
Yeah. So it needs to be facing generally towards the track, but it's you can get away with quite a lot. So as long as you can see the screen, it'll figure out which way is forward just by you driving forward. The key thing on the location of the tablet itself, the Catalyst main unit, is the back of the unit needs to be able to see out of the windshield to be able to get a good picture of the sky for all of these satellites going around in space. So we need to make sure that we're getting quite a few satellites in front of you. And then we also need to make sure we're getting satellites behind you. So in that latest software update, you will see there's like a new quadrant-based satellite map that will show, where it will show you, hey, you've got this many in front of you, you've got this many to your right and this many to your left, but you need to be able to maybe spin your car around for just like a minute and a half so it gets a good picture of the satellites behind you. And then once it's figured them out once, it'll keep them as you go around and around the track to increase your accuracy.
And just to add to that, so what really Quinn's referring to then is on the back of the unit, the GPS antenna is at the top on one of the sides, and that is the element that you cannot cover. So we've seen some people put them in dashes, like bury them deep in the car and put them low. It cannot get a GPS signal. You can't do that. It really has to be in the windscreen to be able to see that. The other element, and just to get a little bit geeky on that one, that Quinn talks about when he talks about the quadrants, is the reason for that, and the reason why this is so important, is any GPS device, when it gets a signal, and it gets a signal from a satellite, it has to get a spread constellation. But it actually has to download things. This is what people don't realize. It has to download data called ephemeris data from the satellite itself. So it needs an uninterrupted view for a short period of time to that satellite to say, yep, I've got that data and everything's good to go. And that's what that new graphic is really going to emphasize, just to give you the full understanding of what you need to do to get the best possible experience out of your Catalyst.
One more thing to think about for mounting is if you put it on the far right side of your car, just make sure that this part of the unit is not being blocked by the A-pillar. If you've got the unit being blocked by the A-pillar there, that's going to absorb a lot of the satellite signal, and you're going to be missing out on some of that. We are inside right now, so we're probably not getting a great signal. But if you want to see some of the satellites before you actually go into a race or into a drive, you can hit the little like cell phone signal icon on our main screen, and it'll show you all of the different satellites you have. So you just have an idea of kind of how many you can see at any given time and what your spread is throughout the sky. But you don't need to understand all of that stuff there. If you just hit drive and you hit start, and if it doesn't think your signal is good enough, it'll walk you through what you need to be changing to get a better signal.
Can I just jump in on a couple things there? One thing mainly is I've been at a couple of tracks where we installed a demo unit in somebody's car in a garage, and they pulled out of the garage, directly went on the track, and the unit didn't have time to find all the satellites. So if you're setting it up inside a garage, I think it's good advice to pull out and just sit for a minute or two and let it find the satellites before going out.
And then I don't know, are we good to move on to maybe camera?
Yeah, why don't you cover that now? Just because I know that there's a bunch of questions about it. So
yeah, so the Catalyst comes with a separate remote camera that kind of looks like a mini version of like one of our dash cams. It is not a dash cam, though. I will preface with that. So what you want to do with that one, that is a required part of the Catalyst itself, because that's how we can tell where the track is. So since we don't actually have track maps on the unit, we need to build the track map as we go around, and the camera's what helps us do that. So we try to make sure that the camera is mounted as high up in your windshield as possible. A lot of people put it behind their rear view mirrors, and then they'll just put the cable through their headliner, through the A-pillar, and then down over to the Catalyst and plug it into the back. So having that high up in your car is important, because we need to see right down in front of the car's hood. But yes, it does need to be up that far. Some people have tried to put it back in the cockpit itself so they can see steering input and stuff like that. Unfortunately, because we need the camera to see all of the road, that configuration is not going to work for the Catalyst. And then just, making sure it's pointed forward and down a little bit. And there's kind of like a skeleton graphic that'll show up on your alignment screen that'll help you align it with your car's hood.
Okay, so I think we've covered that part of it in terms of you have to have it in a position where it can see the satellites. Sometimes you got to give it a minute or so to allow it to see that, and the camera's got to be up there on the windshield and as high up in the center, correct? Yep. Okay. Well, okay, then I'm just gonna. Somebody asked, can I connect additional cameras? No.
So currently that is not supported, no. But you can export the video, and if you are creative, certainly combine it with other streams. I did see one just there that I'll touch on, which is, can the Garmin be used in an open cockpit car in wet conditions? This is a great question. It's not waterproof, so the real answer is no, not in wet conditions. It really is intended for closed cockpit conditions. So that is something which we do get a lot. We have seen a lot of people use them in cars like Radicals and others, but they just have to disconnect it when it is wet in those adverse conditions.
Okay, and then Ken asks, what is the largest card you can add to the unit?
So currently, I believe we list on our website that the current supported largest card that we've tested with is 256. I do know some people are having some success with larger cards. We just haven't fully tested that yet. So that's not a official line at this point.
Okay, and Haley asked, I've noticed there's a newer Catalyst overlay over the video. How do I change to the newer overlay, and can I add this to previously recorded content?
Yeah, so that is actually all part of exporting videos. So maybe, Quinn, if you want to do a quick demo of how to export a video, you can see that directly on the device.
Yeah, so if you want to go and export a video, all you have to do is you can either go into review and just find the latest thing. We'll go to this session from Heartland Park. And if you want to export your actual session video, you can just press this video icon down there. And then this little floppy disk save icon up in the top right, if you click that, that will ask you, do you want to export your entire session from start to finish to include all of your laps? Or do you just want to export maybe your best lap of the day? Once you select what you want to export, you can hit next. And then you can actually say, well, what delta timer? We provide 4 different delta timers on the device when you're out on track for saying, well, I really want to be getting closer to my optimal each time. I don't really care if the delta timer is red all the time. So you can say, well, compare my best lap to my optimal lap. You can see where maybe those big jumps are for where you need to be focusing. And then if you hit save video there, it would start a process. It would start applying those overlays to the video on the SD card, and then putting them in a folder. It's a Garmin folder, and then saved videos would be where you find that. And it'll tell you on the device where to find it on the SD card. But what you can also do is you can go into laps and you can hit optimal and then hit your link to your optimal lap video there. And you can actually save your optimal lap with overlays as well. So if you just want to share your optimal lap on a video sharing platform, that would be a place to do that as well.
And then can you just show maybe what an exported video looks like, just so that everyone understands what this new overlays is we're talking about?
So all of the videos on your device you can access by hitting the current time remaining icon. Pointing's hard. Hitting the time remaining icon up in the top of the unit. You can, so this is how you clear up space, but you can also just go and view all of your videos individually.
And so you clicked on select videos.
Yep. So you click on select videos. And if you move over to the saved videos tab, this will show you all of the ones that have been exported on device. So I can pull up this Circuit of the Americas session here, and then it will show this overlay. You've got a speedometer, a GG diagram, your current lap time, the delta, which I will skip forward so you can start seeing. So there's a delta timer here on the screen, current. It'll show you where you're at on the track and then what lap you're on and what segment you're on.
And then the GG diagram is obviously something which has been integrated in there, which is really good to use, especially when you're reviewing, where you're braking. So optimal lap is something I use quite often, especially if I'm trying to build that throughout the weekend. I'll kind of export one and just watch it back and back, because visualization is really critical to having that performance. It looks like Ross has maybe got something to add at that point.
Well, yeah, I love all these technical questions. I'm kind of like, gee, can we talk about driving at some point today? I'm joking. This is all good stuff. This is really good stuff.
One thing I did, it looks like there was one question about the different Delta timer modes. So the different Delta timers that we support are the best lap of the session. It will give you a comparison to the best lap you've had all day, the best lap you've had of all time, and your optimal itself. So you can change what it's comparing you to against to show you either the green or the red timing on the track.
And so Chris had asked, maybe this is related in here, is there an option to add date and timestamp to exported saved videos?
We do not currently have that added. So that's more of a driving recorder, dash cam type feature. Yeah. And so it's really what it comes down to is it's the actual date and time that the lap was driven is, I believe, exported as part of the file name. Is that correct?
Yes, it's in the folder structure of it. So you can sort it by that, but there is no quote unquote proof of a certain date within the video frame itself.
And that's really important to mention at this point. So once you've exported a video, you might be asking, how do I get to it? And so there's two ways to do that. One is if you've put a secondary SD card in the device, in the spare SD card slot, because there is already one in here. So if you put it in there, it will automatically default to that. So anytime you load that side SD card slot, the video saving is going to default there. However, if you haven't added one, but you've exported a video,
that might be
okay. Exported a video, the SD card itself is contained underneath a hidden flap at the bottom of the device. And that's basically where the SD card is. So once you've exported it, you can eject the SD card and actually share it however you wish via your computer or elsewhere.
Actually, maybe it's best because there's been a few, and I've got a few questions here that are kind of talking about the optimal lap and how the segments are figured out and things. So do you want to explain that from a technical perspective, and then maybe I can just say it's how cool it is and how to use it? Yeah.
Absolutely. So obviously we can't drill down into too many details, but Quinn, do you want to kind of start with that?
Yeah. So as Adam said, we still need to be employed at the end of the day. So we get our bosses would get really mad if we told you everything about the optimal app. But in a nutshell, we want to impress that the optimal app is very, very different from a sum of best segments that are available in other devices. So the optimal app is looking at thousands of different places throughout all of your laps and looking at places where you're doing similar things. You're at the same place on the track, you're going the same speed, and just at every single moment you're going down, it's looking, well, this is really similar on lap 3 to what they were doing on lap 6. So let's just move them over. So that's how you can have these jumps from you're on one lap, and all of a sudden you're watching the video and a car will just disappear in front of you. And now suddenly you're in another lap. The sum of best segments might show you a better time than the optimal lap, but it isn't always something that you can drive, because you might have gotten to the end of, sector 1, and then you were on the right side of the track. And then maybe your best sector 2 time is when you started on the left side of the track. And I'd like to meet the guy who can teleport his car from one side of the track to the other just to get those few extra seconds off of his lap time. I don't know what else you wanted me to discuss, maybe with the optimal lap.
So I think Ross wanted to jump in with.
Well, there's a question here, and I think I've seen a couple of people sort of ask something similar to this, and it's, are the segments for each track based on GPS points or on driver actions, i.e. braking, acceleration, et cetera? And you kind of touched on that there. I don't know if that fully answered that question, but.
Yeah, so for sure they're based on driver action. So that's one thing to really impress is the optimal lap, when it's built, it's a personal lap for you and the car. So that's why it's critical to select the right driver and the right car, because everybody is slightly different. And based on that, the segments are built from your performance of how you generally drive that track. So that's something which, when you actually go back and review the optimal lap, it's something you in that car have done. And it's just looking at that. So often we get questions such as, will it support front-wheel drive cars and rear-wheel drive cars? Absolutely. Just put in the car that you're driving and it will do the rest, because it's behind the scenes basically looking at you in the performance in that vehicle.
Yeah, so it'll make sure it's never pulling it in. If you share a Catalyst with your spouse, or if you share a car with somebody else, as long as you have separated your driver profiles, or if you've separated your cars, all of those things will make sure that your optimal lap data is only yours and it won't be pulling in from anywhere else. I've got a optimal lap video here that I can show to kind of showcase the seamlessness of the transitions. So we build this optimal lap video at the end of all of our processing as proof, saying this is recorded from your car when you were in the driver's seat, and we can walk you through all of the changes on how you get from one lap to the other. So I believe as we follow this car through the S's here, in maybe about 5 more seconds, that car will just disappear, but nothing else in the frame changed. So we're not doing any fancy Photoshop or anything and making the car disappear. That's just from a different time than you were driving that session. And I think there's a couple of more just after this turn here. And now suddenly it's a bright sunny day and you're going along and you pass that guy, got some speed. And, an optimal lap could have maybe 1 transition in it, or it could have 15 transitions in it. It just learns from looking at what you've done, and it's never going to suggest anything you've never done before. And the proof of that is the video.
And to me, this is, I toggle back and forth between 2 or 3 different things, but this is, if not the most important thing about the Catalyst, it is one of the top 2 or 3. I mean, as anybody knows that follow what I teach, I mean, it is so critically important that you have a good mental image of what you're trying to do. And to me, every single time you go on track, just before you go on track, watch your optimal video, because it cements that picture. And it's like, that video there that we're watching right now for this driver is how that driver could turn their optimal fast lap. And part of getting that mental image is so critically important to be able to drive well. So this is what Formula One drivers can do without this is they can go, well, if I put that segment from that corner together and that segment from that corner together, I can go a little bit quicker. Well, the Catalyst does that for you and then allows you to sit there and watch that. So to me, every single time before you go on track, watch the optimal lap video so you're fresh and you know what you're going to be working on. It's the best part. Bill asked a really interesting question, and curious about whether the Catalyst is suitable, and if so, the recommended workflow to use the Catalyst as a coach while moving between various students' cars. So I've been at a number of HPDE events where we've used the Catalyst, and other instructors have used the Catalyst to move back and forth between different cars. You know, in the perfect world, there'd be you wouldn't have to take your Catalyst from one to the next just because it's going to save some time. But to the point that Quinn made, if each driver has a profile set up, then you're going to be working with improving that driver's profile. You know, I've had people say, well, you know, what if I put some super fast driver in my car? And it's like, okay, we can put Lewis Hamilton or Max Verstappen or Charles Leclerc, whoever your favorite is today, in your car, and they could go out and drive around. And yes, the Catalyst would actually encourage you to go and drive like them. It's possible, though, just possible, that those drivers have a little bit better skill than you do. And I know that's maybe hard to believe, but they might be a little bit better. So there's a danger in doing that. And I'm pretty sure that Garmin would not recommend that. So, you know, Bill, to your point, I guess, is, you know, to me, the advantage of using the Catalyst with a student is, you know, you can finish a session and very quickly you can do that debrief, because the Catalyst has helped you identify what the top 3 things are that the driver should work on. And it does that based on which segments, areas of the track have the greatest opportunity for making an improvement in lap time. And, you know, so immediately you could stop. And if you didn't have a lot of time, you could just immediately go to opportunities, click on that, and it's going to come up with the opportunity 1. And you could say, boom, boom, boom. You could work through that of what it is that it's telling you to do. You could get to 2, you could get to 3. And you could say, okay, what I want you to do is think about each of those ones, watch the optimal video, and I'll be back the next session. You go on to your next student and do the exact same thing again. So it's a tool to, and actually on my YouTube channel, my Speed Secrets YouTube channel, we recorded a quick little video around using the Catalyst as a self-coaching tool, but also as an assistant coach to the coaches. So I guess I'd recommend that you go and take a look at that. If you would go to my Speed Secrets YouTube channel, there's a video on that. But I think that this is the Catalyst is a great tool to help instructors. Will not replace them. At some point in time, you got to be able, until Adam and Quinn figure out a way that the Catalyst can look in the eyes of the student and go, what are they thinking? You know, what's their emotions like? Until they can figure that piece out, we've got jobs. So
we do have a camera that faces backwards as well for ride sharing platforms. So.
Okay.
Not related to the Catalyst before you get anyone excited. So just to add something a little bit to that, Ross, I brought up a summary screen here because I think this is important. So there's a couple of elements here that I use with students that helps reinforce this. So there's been some questions about what it does, and is it ever going to make you find your optimal apex? So really what it's doing is, as Ross is pointing out, is it's focusing on you and what you're able to do at your current skill level. And what I try to do first and foremost is, with a lot of students, yes, we want to go after lap times, but really you want to get consistent first. And so this summary screen has a number of numbers on there which are critical to that. And so I'm going to get you guys to think about for a second a golf handicap, right? Because for some people that translates, right? That tells you what your level you're performing at. What we've done is there are 3 elements called lap time variabilities up here. So we've got the best sequential variability, we've got our top 3 and top 5. And what that means is the best sequential variability are the best 3 laps back to back, all consecutive. How close are they together? The lower that number, the better. So what I tend to do with students is, the first time I go out is I say, forget lap times. Let's just go and get consistent times themselves. So we're not going for fast lap times, not forget lap times. We're not going for fast lap times. We're going to just get consistent times. So from there, I get a baseline, because if they're consistent, I can introduce a new skill or say, okay, try turning into this corner differently. If they're not consistent, that's actually really difficult. So that's what the lap time variability does. It really goes and hones on that. Now, sure, that means if someone's super consistent, they've reached a plateau, and that's where the pro coach comes in. So as Ross says, and others have said, the device is not there intended to replace the pro coach. It's there to supplement and improve any level of coaching that you get, whether it be from your friends or coaches like Ross and others. But basically, that's what it's trying to do. So I basically work with the variabilities. And then the top 3 and top 5, I didn't explain that, but basically that's the forgetting those laps where there's traffic or anything else, it takes that out and is just looking at your top 3 literally or your top 5 laps and gives you that. So it gives you how consistent are you over a longer period of time. Now, ultimately, though, everything it's doing under the hood, one thing I didn't explain earlier, which is important, and I saw a question about, was about this average lap. And what we're basically referring to there is your average performance when you are not being held up. It's an intelligent average. It's able to, it knows when there's another vehicle holding you up, and it says, I'm going to discard that portion of the track and not include that into the average lap, which is why the average lap is so powerful, because it doesn't include those times when you're actually being held up due to traffic or other things. So sorry, I apologize. I was probably answering a number of questions there all in one go, but I wanted to cover that because Ross really excited to go into some of the depth about how the device works and how it can be used from a coaching perspective.
And the other resource that I have was, and Adam, you touched on it just at the very beginning, was, I created this document. Some of you may have already seen it, but I created this document that I call the 5-15-1 process. And it's basically, if you have 5 minutes to spare between sessions and that's all you've got, here are the things that you should look at on the Catalyst before you go back out on the track. And me, if I've got 5 minutes, I'm going to look at the top 3 variability on the top 3. And I'm going to go, if that's a big number, if it's above 1, I know that me as a driver, I need to work on being more consistent. If it's below 1, especially if it's below 0.5, I'm pretty consistent. And then I can work on my outright speed. I look at that. I look at the 3 opportunities. But in 5 minutes, probably what I'm going to do is I'm really going to focus on the number 1 opportunity and just go through that and really understand what it is that the Catalyst is telling me to do. And I'm going to really focus on that. And then I'm going to watch the optimal lap. And then I'm going to spend a minute or 2 just kind of getting a picture in my mind. And then I'm going to go and drive. That's what I would do if I had 5 minutes. If I had 15, I would just spend a little bit more time on making sure that, is my consistency, how many laps did I do? If I did 4 laps, then I'd kind of go, well, okay, my consistency might not be all that bad. It's constantly learning. If I did 10 laps and the variability was out a long ways, I'm going to say, yeah, that's my consistency I need to work on. But I'd also then go into the opportunity 2, opportunity 3, getting really clear on what it is that the Catalyst is telling me to do. And then watch the optimal lap, do a little mental imagery, go and drive. If I had 1 hour, this is what I would do. And I would dig in further, and I'd start digging into the segments tab and getting a lot more into the detail. And can you click on the opportunities just for a minute? Click on opportunity 1. So here's a good example of the very first thing that I look at when I pop up the opportunities. I actually look at the time delta, the bottom right-hand corner screen, where you've got the white line, which is the average, the purple line, or what do you guys call it? Is it purple?
I call it purple.
Okay, the purple line. Okay. Where it starts to split is really where the time is going to be made up. So you can look in this one segment here and you just follow little balls and say it's starting to split there partway through the brake zone. By the end of the brake zone, in that last part of the segment, there's not much to be gained between the 2 of them. So that just tells me, even kind of zoning in a little further on just that little segment, there's a point in there. And sometimes that delta, the lines will stay pretty close together for a long ways, and then just towards the very end of the segment, it'll split. Or other times it will start to split at the very beginning of the segment. So that's the first thing that I kind of look at, is just that. And then I can zoom in and I can look at the speed, and you can see, the purple line is just carrying more entry speed. Exit speed is pretty much equal, right? You can look at the acceleration, deceleration rate. Well, okay, on the purple lap, the deceleration is a very much steeper line. So the driver was braking harder. We can look over at that the illustration, and you can see it's a shorter distance. In my coaching world, it's the driver compressed the brake zone, also moved it in just a tiny little bit, and you can see that on the screen there. And then you could zoom in by clicking on those 2 things on the little images down there in the bottom left, and you can actually see, on the optimal line, you can see the brake marker just shortly in front of the car here, and then on the average lap. So you can kind of go, oh, like visually you go, oh, look at how much later that is, rather than going, I should go and brake later. Well, how much later? This tells you. And by the way, this isn't Lewis Hamilton driving your car. This is what you did on one lap. So it can be done.
Yeah, I think somebody had asked a question earlier on how it determines optimal braking. A reminder, the optimal lap is only built up of stuff it's seen you do before. So if it tells you to brake that much at that time, it's because you've done it at least once and it resulted in a lot of time saving for you.
And this is a question for those of you watching this is, have you ever made what seemed like a mistake and afterwards you went, whoa, actually that helped? Like maybe your foot slipped off the brake pedal, you went to the corner 3 miles an hour faster and you made it. And you go, whoa, I guess I could have carried that much more speed. Sometimes you will do some little variation of what you've been doing with your driving, and the Catalyst knows immediately that was better or worse. And that's where the audio coaching comes in. And one of my other favorite features of the Catalyst is if you go through a segment and it's better than it was ever before, you will hear this phrase that will say new best. And believe me, that becomes addictive. You're like, I'm trying to get another new best. And you guys can correct me. There's good job. There's like 4 different phrases. And I can't remember them until I have my track
keep
again.
pushing.
So, keep pushing, which means that was not as good as your average. Then there is, what's the next one? The average one. I think that one's just something like good job or something like that, isn't it?
I'd have to go back and look at the exact phrases because I don't want to say them wrong. I like you say, I hunt for the new best, and when I hear it, oh, it's just the.
Wait a minute! Did I just stump the experts? Ding, 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 ding. Yeah, okay. No.
The interesting thing with that, though, is those terms, those phrases, we spent a long time developing the right ones. And we've been around the houses on those. And so I actually got Quinn to write one of the words that I always get incorrect on a whiteboard just behind the monitor here, because I didn't want to say the wrong thing. Now, to your point, I should have written those up because we did take a while developing those. So good job on that one, Russ. Thank you.
Yeah.
So just before I forget, just on that note, if people want to see what the product's capable of, both on Ross's YouTube channel and Garmin's YouTube channel, there are videos. And I apologize, I star in some of the Garmin ones, and it was very early on when I was doing online things and I was very awkward on screen, so I apologize completely. But go and check them out because that will actually show you not only the features, how the product works, but there is an example about how the audio coach works. And it's a great example that goes through some of the phrases that you've already mentioned to kind of illustrate it to the user.
And to that point of the new best, I mean, the very, very best coaches provide as much confirming feedback as they do corrective feedback or more. And that was one of the things that you guys built into this thing. And quick story here is Adam, I think you called me or emailed me or something like that and said, what are some of the phrases you use? And I can remember going, why? And I was like, we're going to make this talk. And I was like, what? You can make this thing talk? So I was blown away by the whole idea of that. But the idea that as soon as you do something better than you ever have before, you get immediate feedback and it gives you that reward. And, neuroscience tells us that little reward is like giving a dog a treat. We're going to go back and want to do that over and over and over again.
Yeah. And in addition to the audio feedback, the delta timer feedback is also really, really cathartic where, maybe you've been a quarter second behind the entire lap. And then all of a sudden you hear it yell out new best. And all of a sudden the red turns to half a second ahead on that just because you executed that opportunity perfectly.
Yeah.
So they are. Because there's actually some of it's been appearing in the chats, which has been brilliant. So they are keep pushing. Then it's nice work, above average, and then new best. So,
thank you. And the audio coach needs a name. Sometimes I'm not nice to her.
Can I say what I've called her?
I don't know.
I told you. So I like to call her Cat.
Cat
for Catalyst. but that is not
Oh.
officially by our marketing team. I'll talk to marketing tomorrow and we'll see what they say.
Yeah. And to the, Charlie just put up here, I love catching the green in the corner of my eye too. I mean, that's, again, that reward piece is a big part of why this thing helps people. And I'm going to say that it's going to help some drivers more than others, because some people are, that little green thing means more to them than some audio feedback. I have talked to some drivers who say, oh, the audio part, it actually kind of bothers me. And it's like, okay, so just turn the volume down or don't listen to it. Don't have it turned on. So you can do that. Do you want to quickly touch on the different levels of audio coaching?
Yeah, that's a really good point.
Because I've seen a couple of questions on that. So yeah.
Yeah, so there are two primary levels of audio coaching. There's basically the basic audio coach, which is enabled out of the box. And from that, when you go out on track, it's going to basically give you positive affirmations and lap times. And what I mean by that is when you go around a corner faster than you've ever been around that corner before, it recognizes that, knows that. You've just seen it, you've just felt it, and it's going to congratulate you on that. And it's going to say, hey, that's the fastest you've been around that turn. So that's, again, that positive affirmation. That's how you encourage people and, get people to do the right thing time and time again. From there, though, in order to get other coaching in the basic audio coach, you need to go in and review the opportunities. And that's critical because if you're not an advanced driver, you need to understand when it says brake later, what does that mean? And so you'll come in here, you'll review this opportunity. And when you feel comfortable with reviewing the data and understand what it means, you'll click on that button down the bottom, which says add to race coach. So that means that opportunity then will be enabled. So when you come up on that corner, it's going to coach you on that. And you already know what to do. And so you can decide which ones you want to be coached on. From there, then we've got a level above that in terms of the advanced race coach. And that advanced race coach then is going to turn on all of the coaching at any point. And that really is that opportunity that's adaptive. And as you go around, it's going to look at what you're doing, saying, okay, in this next turn, in order to get the fastest time, you generally are faster when you brake later. So that's what you need to do. And so being an advanced driver, you understand how much that means. And that's why it's critical to only do that if you're an advanced driver, because otherwise you won't know exactly, you haven't reviewed the data and won't know what it means. I know if Ross is sat next to me and coaching me, if he says, hey, brake a little bit later there, I know generally how much I can push it, but I'm still only going to walk it up a little bit, right? So that's what I'm going to do. Now, if someone tells Ross to brake a little bit later, he probably knows exactly what that means. And
I'm going to send it. Yeah. Okay, jumping around here.
Before we jump around, so in order to change that then, you can basically change that in one or two places. One is in the setup page here, before you go out and drive on track, you click on check audio, and from here, you can basically set up the audio prompts. So you can see here, we've got the advanced race coach enabled. If not, you can just have the basic, which is race coach, or off. If you don't want to have anything, turn it off. We see this sometimes in endurance races. So if you're in the car for like a couple of hours, you probably know what you're doing by this point and you don't want to be told. Plus also, you're not necessarily always going for the fastest lap time. You're not going for qualifying times time and time again. You want to get into your groove. So some people turn that off. The other output there, the other elements then you can select in there. So you can do that, but that is driver specific. So you can also do that in the user profile screen, which from the home screen, just to kind of illustrate where that is stored up in the corner, that helmet icon. So you click on the helmet icon, and under this driver, I can actually go in there and change the audible prompts that's available. So if there's a number of people using the device, you can have it set to the different levels as needs be.
Okay, I know we kind of answered this earlier, but just a real quicker. Does the Catalyst need to be mounted perpendicular to the car's direction of travel?
It does not, no.
Okay. So
it has some tolerance. I wouldn't go and do it directly sideways, but it has some tolerance that it can work out itself.
Generally about 30 to 45 degrees in each, rotation direction is about what it can handle.
The camera, though, does need to be level. And when you're aligning the camera, it will not only show you a level to make sure that the camera's level, but it's also going to project a rough outline of a hood. And the idea is or hood or bonnet. The idea is to get that white box and that hood shape just above the hood.
Are you guys okay with me talking about the joke that was made by Jim?
Oh, I didn't see it.
Okay. So does anybody call it God? Garmin Automotive Ultimate Driver Educator. I like telling people I hear what you're saying, but God told me.
So now we've got 2 names for it. That's we should start a collection of names. So.
Yeah. Hey, Martin said, talk a bit about video data overlay on the video of the SD card. Talk a bit about the video data overlay on the video off the SD card.
So I'll touch on 2 aspects just to make sure I understand that question. So there's 2 elements. One is Quinn was showing earlier how to export the video. And again, there's videos out there on YouTube if you missed that. So there's a way to export directly from the device. But once you've exported it, you basically have that exported video in a dedicated directory on the SD card, which is either underneath the hidden panel at the bottom or in the side if you're using a side SD card. The actual overlays themselves, effectively, it's the GG diagram, the delta timer, the track outline, there's a segment and lap from wherever it is, and then there's also some other timing elements down the bottom, current lap time,
delta time, and session best.
Okay.
And then as far as how to get the videos off, if you're on a Windows computer, you can plug the device directly into the computer using a micro USB cable, and it'll show up just like if you plugged your phone into your computer. On Mac, you either have to insert the SD card directly into your computer, or there's some software out there that I think Apple has some documentation for on how to get that to appear on there. All of these things are also on the Garmin support website. So if you need help getting your videos off, the Garmin support website will help with that.
Do you know the URL for that Garmin support website?
Garmin.com/support.
Okay. Somebody could type that in, maybe even, because I'm holding things. Anyways, is there a way to get raw lap data and export it to Excel? Looking for speed, longitudinal, and lateral G.
Currently, no. So the device pretty much does everything you need it to. So that is not something that we've currently got access to.
This is a good one. Can you discuss how to use some of the less obvious info like track out turn rate? Can you pull up one and we'll go to segment and just look at that and you guys can sort of explain how that works, and then we'll go from there, because I like looking at that if I've got more time. So I think it's under position.
Yeah, so here's an example. So this is segment 1 at Circuit of the Americas, I think I selected. And so you get everything from the time, which is the actual segment time itself. So you've got your average and your optimal times. You can actually go and select different laps. So if I wanted to go through and change the laps, I can select on that box at the top and change to other laps. But from there, you've got track usage, which is obviously critically important in terms of how much of the track you're using. So from turn entry, apex and track out, are you using the whole width of the track? So again, we're trying to maximize the radius of that turn to carry as much speed as possible. And so by maximizing that track usage, for sure, we're going to be able to carry more speed. Then you've got the actual turn radius itself. So that's a certain element in the turn. How wide is that turn? And that's another element to use to be able to kind of see, okay, exactly how tight am I turning? Apex type hopefully is self-explanatory, but that can be reinforced in the actual the track positions themselves. And then the track out rate is how much effectively I'm turning when I'm actually tracking out, or at the same point on the track. So again, you want to be straight at that point when you're tracking out. And so that kind of gives you that indication of like just how much was the car still turning, because there's always a little bit of turn as you start to get on the gas. The car is still just yawing just slightly, and that gives you that feedback and information to help you understand.
And I think it's interesting that you pull up this one as an example, because as anybody that's driven turn 1 at COTA knows, you can use lots of track, and some cars keeping the car right on that outside edge before turning in is the best way to go. If you watch Formula One, the US Grand Prix, you see a lot of Formula One drivers come in and they don't use all the track on the entry. It's such a long distance that for them, a shorter distance is an advantage. And some cars I've driven at COTA where to not use all the track on the entry is an advantage. So like anything, the further you dig into this, the more it generates questions. And sometimes you'll go, well, hey, I used, you may find that you used less track, but you went faster. And that should, as a driver, just make you ask the question, well, why? Okay, well, maybe the shorter distance helps. So, like anything, you can keep digging deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper. And a lot of times it just generates more questions that you need to figure out the answer to. And I don't know. I think you guys got to figure it out so that it gives us all the answers, and therefore we can just have Cat or God, whoever we're calling this thing, drive the car for us. No.
Where's the fun in that?
No, that would be terrible, wouldn't it? Yeah. Hey, Charlie had asked, my wife and I installed both of our Catalysts same time, but on our track, it's broken up in different segments, making it hard for us to compare ourselves against one another. Any help?
Yeah, so sometimes that occurs depending on the level of experience of the driver and how they're driving that. We see that sometimes when people go to a track for the first time and they go out for the first session, and it's chopped up very differently from how it should be chopped up later based on their getting familiar with the track. There are ways to facilitate that, which is, right now, in order to reset that, unfortunately, you have to delete that first session. But if it's a slow session, go on, Quinn.
So there is a way to reset a track without deleting your data. So it does make it so that you can't, it basically draws a line where if you are resetting your track, you are separating the old track from the new track. They're still called the same thing on device. It tracks it under the same track name and configuration name and all that stuff. But the track shapes and the way that we divide up the segments will be different. So you won't be able to compare from before that line to after that line anymore. But in order to do that, you can go down to tracks, and this is just sorted alphabetically. So we'll just click that first one there. And if you tap the name of the track 10 times, a little pop-up will come up that basically says, hey, do you want to reset this? It'll, you're not going to lose any data, but it's going to basically start learning the track new. So if you went to a track that you've never been to before, you're not really happy with the way that it divided it up. This is your way to saying, no, I know how to drive this track now. I wanted to relearn my braking segments.
So Quinn's just given you, one of those hidden secrets that we've got, generally used by support, but it's out there now, so that's good, right? You guys can go and use that. So absolutely, it really helps with that ability to be able to do that without losing data, for sure. Now, I tend to, with that first slow session, I like to, if I do that, I like to get rid of that just to kind of keep things clean. But yes, absolutely, if you want to go do that, that will help. And then, especially with you guys in the example of the husband and wife that have just gone out there, what you'll find then as you get more into the weekend, if you reset that configuration, it'll be much closer and you'll be able to compare it much more directly.
Stephen had asked, does it have G-force sensors? If so, will it tell you aren't cornering as hard as you could be in certain turns? And you guys can answer the technical side of that. I'll just say there is nothing in the world that could tell you that you're not at the limit. I mean, there's no data system in the world that says you can go around that corner at 1.87 Gs. But as you go a little farther and push a little bit more, it's going to then recognize that and say, oh, you can do more of that. So it's going to encourage you to do that. Correct?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. And so based on that, you're absolutely right. We never tell you anything that you haven't already done. And we will never tell you that you can do or push, a cornering G-force that you haven't already shown us that you can do. And so you'll basically see that time and time again, that's how the optimal app is built up. And we don't push you into that area of the track that you've not been, or how much G's you're pulling that you haven't pulled before. Some of that, like Ross was saying earlier, though, is down to, as you develop through your driving career and increase in terms of skill, you're going to change some of those things and it's going to adapt with you. So as you adapt and are able to, use trail braking to perhaps load the car in a different way, actually going into the corner, it's going to learn and adapt with you and actually say, hey, reinforce, that was quicker. Go and do that again. And that's the key to it.
So there's two questions that are kind of related to that in a way. And Tom had asked, how can I use the Catalyst to learn a new line through a corner? And the other one was, if the Catalyst doesn't know the actual optimal driving line for the track, how do you work towards the optimal apex, et cetera, except by random lines? And part of that is you go as a driver, that's what you do, right? I mean, you go and experiment, you turn in a little earlier and you see what that does. You turn in a little bit later, you apex a little sooner, you unwind a little sooner. And, before we had any electronics, how did AJ Foyt and Mario Andretti or Juan Manuel Fangio many years ago learn line through a corner? They would go through a corner and go, that felt faster. Well, if you do that exact same thing, you'll come out of the corner and it will say, keep pushing, or it'll say new best. And so it gives you that feedback immediately. So the simple answer to Tom and Gary's questions there, I think, is you experiment a little bit. And, as you start to, if you turned in a little bit later and that helped, the next lap, the Catalyst is going to say, turn in later. And of course, that's all relative to what you've done before. It's not turn in 20 feet later. It's just, it's relative to what you've done before. So it's experimentation a little bit. And that's what all great drivers do, is they test things. And the Catalyst just helps you learn from that quicker.
And there's a story that Ross will often talk about involving a squirrel, which I won't go into, but it's a funny story, and go and find it. He's got it in one of his other videos. But anyway, my point there being was, no driver is that consistent that they're not going to go and try new things. And that's what Catalyst is doing, is looking at all of those little bits that you've done, all those minute changes you're giving it, and trying to reinforce what's quick. Now, to the point when you plateau and you become super consistent, yes, you need to go and try something new. But for beginner drivers, that could be introducing a new skill. Your consistency will fall off, going back to those consistency numbers I spoke about earlier, and you'll have to work to get back consistent. But that's really what it comes down to, is it's always going to hone where you are currently at in your skill level, focus on consistency, then you get quickly, but you're always going to have slightly different inputs. I had an endurance race recently where it wasn't until afterwards that I saw it, which I was kicking myself for, because I knew there was two corners that if I took them just one particular way, it was really quick. And I couldn't for the life of me work out what it was. I came back immediately when I was reviewing the data. Catalyst said, slow in, fast out. I'm like, of course it was. Why didn't, that's one of the first things you should always try. But, you're out there, the adrenaline's going, you don't necessarily want to. And you think, no, it can't be that slow. It can't be that slow. Oh, it was that slow. And I was just kicking myself because I'm like, Catalyst knew it. I turned off the audio prompts, which is my mistake. But, it's just like, yes, I needed to go slow in, fast out.
And the variability scores that we give within the session summary can be a good time to determine, when am I done learning this track and when is it time to start experimenting with some of those differences. So like both Adam and Ross have said earlier, once you're consistent, your scores are somewhere, less than 1%, maybe even less than 0.5%. You're comfortable enough, hopefully, to start just trying out different lines. And if they appear in your optimal, then that's the thing to do.
So just a heads up, I'm looking at the time, and we're probably going to wrap up in the next 10 to 15 minutes or so. I'm sure we're not going to answer every single question here. If you have a question, again, just email it into that email address, the pit crew, Garmin pit crew at garmin.com. But we'll carry on here for a little bit more.
So Ross, I've been writing down a few questions. I'll just do a very quick, as we go through and you look at some others, I'll do a quick fire round because these are the ones I can answer fairly quickly.
Okay.
So one of the elements here is, does it support an external GPS? And no, it doesn't support an external GPS. So this is actually, we're very proud of the GPS that we have in this device and the performance of it. And so it's been tailored, and that's a very hard problem to do. And so this is one of our highest sensitivity GPS to date, and the performance is very good. So it really is important to get that display, above the dash so that the antenna can look out over the windshield. So I really do reinforce that one. It is for closed loop circuits only. So unfortunately, no hill climbs, no autocross. It's basically closed loop circuits is the way that it currently works. Someone else asked about camera clips and whether or not the clips are available. I'll take that away and look into that one. I'm not sure. I think we included 10 in the box, but it sounds like there's a desire to get more clips if you move it from one vehicle to another. We do sell kits, which comes with a new camera, which has new clips in, but I'll look into that one. Stephen mentioned the 5:15 one, which Ross has also mentioned. There's a great video that Ross has got out there. So I encourage you to go and look at that. That's a very small primer in terms of, hey, I've got 5 minutes. What do I need to do? So again, Ross's video, 5:15 one. Do I have 5 minutes, 15 minutes, or an hour? That's a great video to go and watch. Someone asked about a remote display, and there's been a couple of questions about that, about just being able to hook it up to a display. That's something which we've got from an engineering perspective right now. We are currently looking at to say, okay, how do we make that available? So that's something which we might be able to do. No promises there, but that kind of came up, and we'll have a better answer soon. Number of laps. So how many laps does it take to actually be able to coach? So it currently takes 3 laps before coaching is provided on the track, and that's the first time you've been out there. So if you've already been out there during the weekend, it's going to be able to coach immediately on the first flying lap. It will stop coaching when you start to fall off for any reason. So just bear in mind, if it goes quiet, you might be because you've been slowing down. And then there was another element to that, which I'll think about in a second. And then issues. Someone was asking, said they had an issue. If you do get any issues, I really hope that's not the case, but please contact our support. Don't just reset the device. Because if you've got any issues, there is a way for us to collect data from the device that we can go and work out exactly what's happened. And it's very easy to do. So please contact support, and we can tell you how to do that. And then, hopefully we'll be able to take care of anything. But please don't just reset the device, because if you do that, we lose any opportunity to find out what was wrong for you. So.
Wow, that was awesome, Adam.
And time.
Yeah, great. New best. Okay, so Terrence and Kurt both asked questions that I think are related, and I'll read this one. The edges of the track in the review display often appear wavy, wiggly in places where they should be smooth. Why is this, and how do I fix it?
So sometimes that can be because you don't have the camera aligned correctly. So that's one thing that I would really encourage you to go and check. So if you don't have it aligned correctly, that can do that.
I believe that if you don't have the device connected, it should walk you, or maybe not. I've got a side USB plugged into this, so we can mirror it to the TV right now. If I didn't have that plugged in, it should walk you through the camera alignment. And if it takes you right to the screen, you can hit a button that says remount, and it'll walk you back through that activity.
Okay. Mark asked, and you kind of touched on this, I think, but what's the best way to save or download optimal laps from the Garmin Catalyst to reduce the used memory on the Catalyst? And maybe you can kind of touch a little bit on the memory piece.
Yeah, so what I would say is, if there are videos that you would like to save, then eject the SD card. All videos are saved on the SD card. So eject the SD card first and then copy it off. Don't delete the videos necessarily from the SD card, because the device will do that for you. But there is actually that icon up there which has got the SD card and the time remaining on the SD card. If you click on that, once you've copied the videos that you want, you can do one of two things. One is go into auto delete videos, and that will free up a certain number of hours for you so that you can continue through your weekend, or actually select videos and be very selective about which ones you want to get rid of. So those two options are available to you once you've copied the videos off the SD card that you wanted to save.
If you're a data hoarder and you never want to give up any video ever, because that's going to be your secret to getting those extra time. All of the session data is stored internally on device. It's just the videos that are stored on the SD card. So theoretically, you can eject the SD card, put a brand new one in, and all of your old sessions will still stay on the device. You just won't have the videos for them. Now, if you go back and you're looking at a session from a year ago, you can go find last year's SD card, put it back in the device, and the videos will show back up again.
Yeah, so one way to do that is to buy a large SD card, like a 256 gigabyte card, and then literally have one for every year. So, 2021, here's my 2021 card. That is really easy to organize, because then you say, oh, I want to see the videos from last year. It's all on one card. You put it in. Job's a good one.
And Doug asked, is there any way to get around the unit deleting the video and all the data when it erroneously thinks I drove a different configuration?
Yeah, so we have improved that in the latest software. So if you connect it to Wi-Fi and download the latest update, we've improved the detection of same circuit versus different circuit. So hopefully you just see that warning less. But even if you do see it again, there is now an option to save your video regardless of what happened with the device. So you'll always have that. The latest software version is 4.40. If you check under your device settings, as long as you see that, you're on the latest version.
Okay. Stephen asked, we've been using our Garmin all as one driver, even though we have 3 drivers in an endurance race car when we're testing. We assume that by doing it this way, that each driver's info is then helping the other drivers with live coaching info. Is that correct?
It is, yes.
Yeah. Okay. I was gonna say, I don't know what your official response to that is, but I know that it helps.
Yeah, not encouraged for sure, because every driver is different. So that's why there are different profiles. But if you're, similar skill level, then yes, you are effectively getting that. There was another one on that note, though, was talking about, the actual coaching and the optimal lap. How many days is that used to go into that? And that's effectively the last 4 days. So we look back 4 days, and that's generally a good window to use to include everything from practice, qualifying, and a couple of race days.
Yeah. This is an interesting question. What parameters are used when calculating percent variance? Is it time only, or does the algorithm consider other parameters?
It's time. So it's time to calculate the variability. And again.
Okay.
There's a polarizer question here where you're just looking for that. So they were talking about uses of the polarizer. So the polarizer is used to get rid of any glare from behind glass. So for sure, in 90% of the setups where you're not open cockpit, which again, the device is not waterproof, so it's not intended for open cockpit. But if you do use that, then you don't necessarily need it. But behind glass, you really should be using the polarizer, which comes installed on the camera at any time. And there are replacement ones available, just in case you've lost yours.
Yep. The polarizer can also help with reflections off of the road if you're racing late in the day or early in the morning. You've got a little, bouncing off the pavement. It'll help with that.
And water.
Yep, and with water. If you've taken it off and you buy a replacement, there is a little alignment tech on it. I know it's round. It's really hard to tell, what orientation it's in. But there's a little notch in it. As long as that notch is facing up, you're good to go.
Okay. We're getting into the quick fire round again. So, can 2 drivers use the same card, or should we have our own?
You can use the same card. Yeah.
Having trouble finding Bluetooth earbuds that can communicate with the Catalyst. Apple EarPods don't work, nor my Sony earphones. Will resort to wired ones unless I find something that works. I can tell you that I've tried my Apple EarPods and it did work, but I don't know why it wouldn't. So,
yeah, I remember back vaguely there was an early version of software that had there was a volume change. So if you're on an early version of software and you're trying that with the Bluetooth earbuds, you might want to update your software.
Yeah. So some people were saying they can't get it loud enough. There was in our operating system, there was a limit to it. We have found a way around that. So now it can get a little bit louder. Obviously there's a test audio button. We encourage everybody to use it before you get all the way out on the track and you find that it's shouting in your ears.
Yeah. And so what Quinn means is before you hit start, you again click on the check audio. And then there is a test audio. So the volume's down right now, but if I turn the volume up,
starting first lap,
it will actually, say something.
starting first lap.
And then you can test that in your headset to make sure you can hear it. Bearing in mind, obviously, things get a little bit louder out on the track. You want to take that into consideration.
Okay. We had to get into some controversy at some point here. Read that specific driving club has banned the device because it was timing laps akin to racing. Is this a concern that will spread? I'm going to make a quick comment on that it used to be that there was this, there were track organization clubs that would not allow lap timers or stopwatches or anything like that. And the reason was that supposedly that the insurance companies would not cover an event that had timed laps. And what I have done in the last number of years is, because a lot of that's been relaxed just because, hey, everybody's got who doesn't have a timer in their pocket these days with a cell phone, right? A smartphone. So I've talked to insurance companies And I've never been able to find an insurance company that says, yeah, we won't cover you if you're taking lap times. So there may be some legacy part of that where, well, it's just the way we've always done it. We've always said you can't time it. I've heard that may be different in other parts of the world other than North America, but I think it's one of those things that needs to be actually officially checked and not just, well, we've always done it that way.
To that end, though, we do have a feature in there to support you. So from the setup page, you can click on lap timer down in the bottom left-hand corner, and you can basically say not only change your delta time if you want to change it against something else, but you can turn off lap timing display during the race. And then you can also turn off the audible lap time. So you can literally just have a blank display as you're going around to meet the requirements of some of those organizations, because we understand that they're out there. Definitely want to make sure that you guys can get the benefit of collecting the data so that you can review it later.
Yep, great. Dean had asked, can I use my normal radio at the same time? And I don't know if that's a separate radio kit in a race car. And like I said, I know that I think Racing Radios, Peter Cross can probably help you point in the right direction. Somebody has done a cable that's a Y cable that plugs into your radio system, into your helmet, and into the Catalyst. So you can do that. If you're talking about Bluetooth in your car while you're driving around, I'm assuming that it's going to work exactly like if you're listening to your stereo while driving down the highway and your GPS tells you to make a left turn. It's going to work the same way there. So this is Bradley asked, randomly when I select start, I got a camera not connected. I click on camera alignment and it seems to clear. Is there something I can do to solve this?
So sometimes I've seen and heard reports of this where people actually have the display, on the arm mounted very, very close to the dashboard. And it's just close enough that when you put it on, it doesn't fully connect in and the dashboard is holding it off just ever so slightly. So if you see anything like that, just make sure that display is just, it doesn't have to be by much, but just elevated above the dashboard so that the dash is not holding it off. Because, I understand people want to get it as close as possible, but when you get it too close and it just holds it away from the connections, that can cause some issues.
Yeah, there's a really powerful magnet in the back of that. And sometimes it seems like it's connected, but maybe one pin is not touching the mount. So
yeah, just where it's being held off. So again, just make sure it's not being held off by the dashboard.
And one other thing that I've seen during some of our demo things is it was being powered by the cigarette lighter plug, and it was just a little bit loose, and the screen is still going because the battery's got this going. So you think, well, it's all working, it's all got power, but it didn't have the power that powers the camera. Is that correct? How it works?
Yeah, so for sure that cigarette lighter adapter, the CLA, I suppose they call it, it's basically you need to make sure you just push that in the whole way, because yes, it will get power if you push it in a little bit, but just push it in a little bit further on the actual body itself, just to make sure it is fully connected in there.
We've also seen some instability in the in-vehicle USB ports. So we always recommend trying to use either the bare wire connectors that we ship with the unit or the Garmin branded cigarette lighter adapter that it can plug into.
Yeah, so everything you need is in the box. Please don't just plug it into any USB port in the car, because generally they cannot provide enough power. But we provide everything in the box to get you going to go directly to a battery connection, bare wires, all the way through to that cigarette lighter adapter to be able to plug straight in.
One of the very first times that I used the Catalyst with a friend's car was a brand new Porsche, and we thought, let's plug it into the USB. That's nice and clean. But I didn't realize that the power that comes out of the USB port isn't enough. So, we're now at 90 minutes. I think we're going to shut this thing down, but I'm going to finish up with one question here because it's my chance to do that. And then encourage you, if you have other questions, again, please email them into the Garmin Pit Crew at garmin.com. Make sure that in the subject line you have the Catalyst Chalktalk in there as well. But so the last question here, it says, Ross, is the feedback useful to someone that drives at your level? Examples. I'm like, okay, now I get to tell my story about the time that you guys invited me to come to Heartland Park, and we were testing a bunch of stuff around, mostly about usability and what color the buttons were. I think we spent a lot of time on that. But I spent 2 days thrashing around in Heartland Park in a car, a really fun car. And, you know, I'm pushing every single lap because that's what is there any other way to drive a car? That's the only way you drive on a track. So I'm pushing all the time, but learning more and more about the device as we're going along. And I remember at the end of the second day, I went, you know what? I've never really had a chance yet to even just let it coach me. So I remember going through the 3 opportunities, and it identified 3 things that I should do. And I went out there and I drove, and it knocked 9/10 of a second off my best lap time. And I remember driving in back to you, and I got out of the car and I looked at you, Adam, and said, okay, I'm out of a job. Which I found that that's not the case, but it blew me away that it could help me find 9/10 of a second. So yeah, you maybe say that, hey, well, you suck as a driver. Well, okay, but I was pushing pretty hard, and there were some quick lap times up until then, but it still found 9/10. The great thing about it was it did have a lot of data to pull from. And I think one of the things that I believe is the more you use it, the better it becomes. So, because it learns from you. So guys, I know we could go on for another 3 hours, I'm pretty sure here, but I think we should probably wrap it up and let people go. And again, please, send your questions, comments in to the email address.
Yep. And then also just to kind of add to that, just check out those videos already out there, either on Garmin's channel or Ross's channel. And there's plenty of more. So there'll be videos out there on what the Catalyst does, how it works, and some of the other features, and even examples of the race coach if you're unsure of what that actually means. And again, I apologize for me starring in some of those.
They're great. They're great. I think there's an Oscar in your future.
No punching.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Okay, guys. Adam, Quinn, thank you so much for joining me on this. This has been fun and educational for me as much as hopefully for a lot of other people as well. Thank you, everybody, for being on this Chalk Talk. And who knows, maybe we'll do some more of these. Thanks, always. Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Really appreciate everyone's time.